Well, thank you everybody for coming. We've listed this on both our New York and our Chicago meetups. We're calling these more like lunch and learns because they're approximately over lunch for both the Eastern and Central time zones, but that really depends on when you take your lunch. So the topic today, Agile Transformation and the Path to Success. So let's get into a little bit of introductions. And so first, let me introduce Responsive Advisors, today's sponsor and host. So we are an organization of bandits that are out there trying to change the world through helping organizations get more nimble. So we find a lot of organizations, they've kind of gotten stuck into this 1950s mindset of controlling everything, and deadlines are the most important thing to hit. And you guys all know what I'm talking about. We're probably all in the same industry. And so we're helping these organizations become more nimble. And the way we do that is through training courses. We do a number of public training classes through Professional Scrum. We are a Scrum.org partner and have been for about 10 years now. We do coaching and advising as well, Scrum team launches, agility checkups, and in the physical world, when we teach classes, we're in Chicago, Los Angeles, New York, and Seattle, but a lot of our classes are online these days, so we're pretty easy to find. Who the heck am I? Well, I'm Rob Pieper. I'll be your speaker for today, and I founded Responsive Advisors going on 7 years ago. It'll be 7 years in precisely 2 weeks. And we have seen, oh God, what is it now? 3 administrations, 2 recessions, and 1 pandemic. Not bad for a small company to survive all that. I'd like to say the same for several businesses in my neighborhood, but yeah, anyway. I have personally been a professional Scrum trainer for about 10 years myself. And that also shocked me because I don't do anything for 10 years, a little bit of a career ADD problem. But I do this national public speaking thing, and this talk is the first run of a talk that I'll actually be giving at the PMI, whatever their global gathering is, out in, I think it's Atlanta this year. So it'll be a different version of this talk, but basically centered around the same concepts. So might as well get in there early and start crafting this presentation. I also realize I've been into technology since I was like 1989. Now, maybe I don't look old enough, but I was like 13 back then. And I was programming a Commodore 64. That's how I learned to program, just by flipping open a book and playing around with this machine. But professionally, I have been an Agile trainer, consultant, been a software engineer, developer. I've pretty much played all the roles on a Scrum team at one point or another. But primarily my job lately is coding and teaching classes and trying to be a servant leader to RA. I do love electronic arts. You probably can see my background here that I've got a lot of toys. I've been collecting musical instruments since I was also probably around 13 years old. So I play guitar, bass, and a bunch of technology, drum machines, and synthesizers. You can get a hold of me at those locations. I'm pretty easy to find if you Google me on the internet. But another thing, if you want a copy of this slide deck, just shoot us an email. info@responsiveadvisors.com, and we'll send you a copy of the slide deck if you find it interesting. Well, let's get into it. So here's our basic agenda. We're going to talk about the who, why, and the what when it comes to Agile Transformation. We're going to talk about the process to transform an organization, and then we're going to talk about how an organization can get started with their own transformation. First, how do you define transformation? Here's the definition I got you. If you click that link, you'll go to a whole page that we created on Agile Transformation. It's about 25 pages long, and it pretty much covers every topic I could think of. So, Agile Transformation, it's the process of shifting a company's operation and management style from a rigid to a flexible design. So it's a transition period. You're going from one to another. So in some cases, it takes you a while to get there. In some cases, you get there quickly, and in some cases, you're almost never done. So with that in mind, let's talk more about why. Why? Why transform? The world changes fast. Raise your hand if ChatGPT is a thing that you've heard of and maybe even use it. And a digital hand raise works too. No one's heard of ChatGPT? We got one? We got one? All right. Well, I got one, a couple others. All right. So you've heard of this tool. And you're probably thinking, hey, how's this going to impact my life? How's this going to impact the way we work? And there are competitors to ChatGPT. I mean, Bard by Google, I find it better. So we're going to see more and more of these language models taking over jobs that were perhaps once done by interns. We'll see. But your competition is getting faster. 1950s style management it's a thing that we still see in today's companies, and frankly it's outdated because it's based on this ability that if you just control everything, you'll get good outcomes. And organizations are finding out faster and faster organizations are the ones that are winning. And so how do they get faster? And that's where the precipitous for change comes. when companies realize they're not fast enough and they need to compete or they're going to have their lunch eaten. So what kind of results can we expect? I don't know about you, but I'd like to be an elephant that can balance on a beach ball. That's a pretty darn nimble elephant. And this is what we're trying to do with companies, is make them more nimble. So results, highly nimble organizations that can adapt quickly. And usually you're going to see bottom-up intelligence as something that is leveraged to do this. Because people on the ground typically know best what the customers need as they're interacting with them more frequently. And so by gathering that information and using it immediately to make decisions, organizations that can capitalize on this will do much, much better than organizations that have to wait for permission. Another big thing here, you're going to have a much, much, much better ability to manage risk as an agile organization. Now, we can't talk in depth as to how that's done, and we're not going to be talking about frameworks so much or agile techniques, just this idea of agile transformation and what it's about. From a numerical perspective, here's some approximations we've come up with in terms of results. Imagine you could save 40% of your time with improved focus on goals, rather than, let's just focus on all the scope and make sure it all gets done. If we stop doing that and start focusing on goals, think about it. 40% of your labor dollars, 40% less time getting work done. That's huge. 50% less development effort, or I should say 50% increase in speed of delivery due to advanced quality practices. Companies that are still doing manual testing, especially in technology fields, are finding it very slow to get things to a done state because human beings have to run through all of the tests. So speeding that up through automation is critical. Budget saved by focusing on solutions and not features. Again, back to this idea of looking at the bigger picture. If I need to get to California by tomorrow, does it matter if I walk, drive, or take a bus? How about an airplane? No one cares, as long as I end up in California by tomorrow. And so focus on those goals, not so much on how to get there, and you can save a lot of money. Now, who's involved? Picked a random photo of our CEO friend at Google. Your CEO and your C-suite is likely involved in an agile transformation. Now, I'm talking about this done right, not done poorly. But done right, this is a soup to nuts, top to bottom, the entire organization singing the same tune kind of thing. So your CEO and your C-suite, they will be involved in a transformation. Management team, directors, director of product, human resources, the finance team, all of them involved in your agile transformation. And of course, all the people doing the work involved in the transformation. This isn't about pushing a new way of working on top of these people, but incorporating them into building a new way of working such that we are faster, more nimble, and more resilient. So it requires everyone on board. Let's talk a little bit about the process. And I do realize I have a lot of content, so I will try to get through it quickly so we got some time at the end for any questions you may have. Stages of transformation. Starting from the left to the right. From the left, we are barely even starting to get benefits from any agile framework at all or practices. Like, no one's using it. We haven't started. And as soon as you get started, you're at stage 2. So somebody went to a Scrum class and starts bringing these ideas back to work. Maybe you're using user stories or story point estimations or some other technique that could be considered part of the agile world of development techniques. Stage 3. Intelligent and intentional trainings and mappings of how this works in your organization are starting to occur. Maybe part of a bigger strategy, maybe not, but you're starting to see some results and it's starting to take hold. Stage 4, this is really when it starts taking hold in your organization, becoming a cultural norm where new people come on, they go through your training programs, whatever you may have established. There are more people using these techniques than others, and you're definitely starting to see results of doing so. Mitigated risk, value delivered sooner, happier customers, perhaps even happier employees. Stage 5. Now this is the golden something or another. This is the gold state. This is where you want to be. This is a highly tuned organization where you have unlimited talent pool and your customers love you. They're all over your products. Best example I've got is Tesla. Look into some of the ways they were working. It's pretty easy to Google. There was a guy named Joe Justice out there. He was their head of Agile department and told some very, very interesting stories about the way they worked. And these are ways that most companies would just die to be able to do. It's crazy how transparent they were, how much they believed in self-management and focus on results. So take a look at them. Definitely worth digging into. Now, real quick, I don't have time to spend a lot on this, but There are two change management frameworks that I think about when I think of Agile transformation because they focus on the change. They focus on how you're going from one state to another state. ADKAR, it starts with awareness. If we're not aware of why a change needs to be made, we won't make it. D is desire. If we do not desire that end state for whatever reason, I don't see what's in it for me, so I don't want to do it, we won't change. And then K, if I don't have the knowledge on how to change, I'm not going to be able to change. Oftentimes, this is where you're going to see training happen. Sure, Scrum training, SAFe training, whatever training you need to get. But with that knowledge in your back pocket, do you have the ability to use it back at work? Sometimes you go to a class and you come back to work and they're like, oh, that stuff is phooey. We can't actually use that here at Acme Corporation. Okay, well, if you don't use it, you'll lose it. Then reinforcement. Let's say we are allowed to use it at work and we're supported that way, but the company or the culture does not reinforce these behaviors. Without that, the change doesn't stick. And so I use this model as a way to kind of strategize on how an organization can change through working with us. I use another one, Kotter's 8-step change management. First step, if we don't have an understanding of a why or an urgency on when to change or why to change, organizations don't. You need a burning platform. You need some reason that is compelling enough to make an organization that has been working the same way for decades and have them switch up. And then it gives a bunch of other ideas on how to do this. And I bake this into the transformation framework that I'm about to show you here coming up. So let's talk about this getting started, how to transform an organization. First, we talked, or this from the 8-step change management framework I mentioned from John Kotter, is this establishing a why. Why are we doing this? Are we losing money? Do we have competition that's just eating our lunch? If you're in the VR space, maybe you just saw that the new Apple Vision Pro came out. Well, that might put a fire under your butt to do something different. And if your product development cycles are far too slow, that might be a reason for you to try to find ways to speed things up. So we got to understand what the current problems are, why this change needs to occur. And it needs to be something that everyone understands because people, the entire organization, are going to have to be involved in making this change. So sometimes it's helpful to come up with a compelling statement that can be shared, something that people can latch onto. Assess, where are you currently? So understand your current challenges. Maybe it doesn't make sense to change. Maybe it does. Maybe you found a why, but it's so expensive we can't make the change. But getting to know what is happening in your organization currently, what your challenges are, what major impediments you might have to success, and start collecting that is really a first step to moving on with this process. What are the goals? What are we hoping to achieve with this change? And by communicating that, we're communicating desire. For example, Johnny the coder thinks, oh, everything's been going fine for the last 10 years. And you remind him that, hey, Johnny, when's the last time you actually talked to a customer and showed them the software that you built? And Johnny might say, well, I don't think I ever have. I always just give it to the BA and the BA shares it with them. Well, wouldn't you like to see the look on their face when you build that piece of software and see that happiness? Johnny's like, yeah, actually I would. Well, that's what a sprint review is for. So you can start incorporating these ideas to build desire at all levels of the organization, which gets people to align with this vision of change. But of course, understand these goals, refine them as necessary as more is learned, and focus on using these goals as a foundation for empirical transformation. And by empirical transformation, I mean one that is based in facts, where you're going to review facts and then you're going to adapt your approach based on facts. Build your transformation team, the A team. I just love this photo. Anyway, you want the right people to help with this transformation effort. You want the right leaders and stakeholders that have influence to make change. You want representation from the relevant areas. You might have someone from HR on the team. You might have technical experts or architects, people that are going to help implement technical change. But ultimately, we need change teams that are going to be helping move forward a lot of initiatives that are going to make these changes happen. So choose wisely, and the composition of these teams can change over time. Create the transformation backlog. This is the list of 1-month projects. I say 1 month because every month it's helpful to have demonstrated some success, some win, as it helps build motivation within the organization and builds momentum. People are going to start to see that, oh, this isn't just the leaders walking around talking about transformation. I actually see progress. Oh, wow, we got a new tool this month. This is great. It helps me in my job. Or, hey, we all went to a training this next month. I learned a new skill. And so each one of these, just think about them as small little 1-month projects that are ordered by impact that can be delivered by these change execution teams, and review them at a town hall to celebrate wins, build momentum, and all that. Of course, training needs to be a big part of this, and that's how we build knowledge. And so in the slide deck, I put reds that map to the ADKAR model I explained earlier, the change management model, but high quality training. Sure, everybody can go watch YouTube videos, but you get what you get. I mean, there's a lot of good stuff on YouTube, and there's a lot of crazy stuff on YouTube. So if you are trying to learn something new, bring in experts that know what they're talking about from whatever it is that you're trying to learn and trying to change. In terms of Scrum and advanced practices, this is something we are often engaged with. Manager training, executive training, same things, but Jira training, that could be important. Learning how to program in Pascal, if that's what you guys do. Understanding how to do that well is going to help you make this transformation. Of course, what is value to your company? If you don't understand what value is, it's going to be very difficult for you to align your teams and people to developing that value. So we might define products or value streams, but ensure that whatever you're defining, you have a general sense of who your customer is and where the money's coming from. And do your best to align to that, such that you are not accidentally building things that no one else really cares about. So match your capacity to demand. Once you've identified those value streams, you want to make sure you have enough people that can satisfy that demand, else you won't be able to satisfy that demand. So keep an eye on value. This may evolve as you learn more about your organization, especially if you were historically siloed. For example, engineering team, all they care about is developing engineering solutions that the design team uses. Well, the designers aren't your customer. There's somebody at the end of the day paying your bills. And so a siloed organization typically does not align teams towards value directly, and that creates dependency issues and all kinds of communication issues within the org. Now, at a product level, at a value stream level, we start creating product backlogs. So what direction are we headed? What is our product goal? Where are we trying to be? How are we going to satisfy these customers 5 years from now? Start with as little as you got and just get started developing on it, because you'll learn more about the product backlog as customers start to see what it is you're producing. And so in Scrum, common thing to use product backlogs. Generic Agile teams also commonly use something called a product backlog. But whatever you call it, it's the ordered list of things that you're going to do to develop value for those customers we identified in the prior state. And make sure to establish quality standards here. In Scrum, we call this a definition of done. We don't release things that are junk to reduce the issue and all the churn of it coming back and then us having to fix it and send it back out again. So build things that are quality, take your time, be methodical. Your customers will appreciate it. All right, let's talk about self-managed teams. Self-managed teams are teams that have all the capabilities and all the knowledge and the skills to do their jobs. They understand the constraints around them, and the management team has basically said, hey, you know what you're doing, I'm going to get out of your way and let you solve these problems. Not all teams are quite that mature. So if you are a manager, it would be your job to ensure you have mature teams that can self-manage so that you can set expectations and get out of their way. Some of the benefits to self-managed teams include they're going to find issues a lot faster. They're going to find ways to make the customer happy a lot sooner. And if that's true, you can just let them handle the situation and you should be good. We can manage risks. We can deliver value faster. What size should these teams be? Well, Jeff Bezos was quoted as calling them 2 pizza teams. If you've never heard of that, it's basically the same amount of people that 2 large pizzas would feed, somewhere in the neighborhood of under 10 people. These teams are small enough to communicate, but also large enough to get a lot of work done. If your teams are too large, you find that their meetings become unproductive, and if they're too small, they just don't make a lot of progress. So kind of a sweet spot there around 2 pizzas. Now, I cannot overemphasize this one enough. Deliver regularly. Speaking of that, I'm waiting for an Amazon package that was supposed to be here yesterday, and it's still not here today, and I'm a little upset about their delivery schedule. But delivery. When you're on the change execution team, in my model here, every month you need to deliver something, some improvement to the organization. If you wait 6 months, people are going to get change fatigue. And they're going to think, I don't see any transparency into what's happening right now. So for the change team, delivering frequently, at least every month, you've got a new change that you're demonstrating and showing off to the organization. But on Scrum teams, every sprint, whatever your sprint length is, 1 week, 2 week, 3 week, 4 week, doesn't matter. Make sure that at the end of every single sprint, you have something to show for your work, a new solution that your stakeholders or customers can use. And for those of you in the Scrum world, remember, delivering these incremental deliveries, creating these incremental deliveries is the whole point of Scrum. Everything else is just in service of this idea. So you got to do it. It creates, you get value out of it. You mitigate risk. You create transparency. There's so many benefits to making sure you have incremental delivery. And it's 99% of the time when I work with teams or companies that are using Scrum incorrectly, that's the one thing they're missing. They're just not producing anything every sprint and they have nothing to review. So, important, muy importante. All right, support. So, keep in mind, as this organization is changing, you need to give them the ability to use it. You need to support the change, you need to support the right behaviors, and you need to create a pathway for people to experiment and learn. You could do this with internal team members that happen to be experts in whatever you're changing into. You could hire expert coaches and advisors. That's something we sometimes help organizations with. But regardless, it requires real leadership. And by real leadership, I mean leading a path, leading and commanding followership. You've got people who like the ideas that they're seeing and they want to follow this path and help this organization be successful. It's not just about pushing a button and upgrading your entire organization, but getting an entire team of human beings to start singing a new tune because you decided the old tune is a little stale. So provide that support from the leadership perspective, however you got to do it. Last little subject I wanted to talk about was building communities of practice. So once you've established the change, the need for change, and you've given the knowledge to change, and you've given the ability for people to use the new ways of working in this organization, you got to find ways to reinforce this and bake it back into the culture. So a common thing people are doing is establishing communities of practice around, whatever it is. Maybe there's a Scrum community of practice, maybe one on design thinking, maybe one on engineering practices or quality code. Depends on what you're building, but you would like to create these voluntary communities of practice to help people feel like they can learn internally better ways of working and then keep reapplying it to their environments. If there's any way we can help with your Agile transformation or Scrum training needs, just let us know.